24 here on the East Coast. The NFL says longtime referee Ed Hockley is retiring. What's interesting, his son Sean is being promoted to a referee. And it's also official here. Rams have placed a non-exclusive franchise tag on LaMarcus Joyner. That will mean that wide receiver Sammy Watkins now is a true free agent. Third straight year the Rams have used the franchise tag. The countdown is on. 2 hours, 28 minutes and change now until the official deadline for the franchise tag, 4 o'clock Eastern. Here's what we know so far. Tag, Jarvis Landry, Ezekiel Ansah, Cowboys defensive end DeMarcus Lawrence, and then just minutes ago, LaMarcus Joyner. We will continue to watch Le'Veon Bell and Graham Gano. Wow, that's a mouthful. It is franchise tag deadline day. 4 o'clock Eastern, the official deadline. We will stay with you up until close to that time. And anyway, Wendy Nixfield Yates, and with us today, Redskins safety. I can still say that.
Yes,
Redskins safety D'Angelo Hall making his, I think, NFL Live debut. No?
Yeah, I might have been on a time or two.
A time or two?
But it's been a while. So
okay, all right. So it's still new.
Yes,
we'll
reintroduction.
That works.
That works, yeah. All things new. Well, you picked a good day. There's plenty to talk about, and we'll start here. The Steelers say they've informed Le'Veon Bell they will apply the franchise tag to Bell for the second consecutive year, given a deal is now highly unlikely by today's 4 o'clock deadline. Bell insists he will not play for less than $14.5 million a year, so some distance still remains between these two sides. Jeremy Fowler joins us now. And Jeremy, you spoke with Le'Veon Bell, who we know now, or we expect to be tagged. How does he expect the next 5 or so months to go as the two sides continue to talk?
Wendy, great to be with you. And basically, Le'Veon Bell is just going to chill out, and he's going to wait for the Steelers to try to come closer to him. Steelers have offered a few different contracts dating back to last year. They were a little over $13 million a year ago. Now they've gotten even higher, Bell told me, but they're not in that sweet spot. Bell won't tell me exactly what his match number is, but of course it is above that $14.5 million tag. And so Bell says he's willing to wait. You know, he wants the long-term deal. He wants to retire a Steeler. Both sides want that. But Bell said, you know, he's comfortable holding true to where he's at. He said he's betting on himself. And really, he wants to be a standard bearer for running backs, and that's really not going to change. So this will probably drag out. He's expecting things to get tense closer to that mid-July deadline if things play out that way.
So, Jeremy, having said that, then I assume he also knows that if no deal is reached, he'll have to make some sort of decision. If the Steelers do ask him to play under the tag, what's he say about that?
Well, Bell laid out all his options when I spoke with him, and that includes possibly retiring.
Well, if there is one stat that shows his versatility, it might be he's averaged 129 scrimmage yards per game in his career. It's the most in NFL history among players who played at least 50 games. You know, we call that Le'Veon Bell is good. You know, that's
the short
Le'Veon. To summarize. So having said all of that, though, the Steelers have decisions. I mean, no-brainer, they want him back. But let's talk about the salary cap implications.
Yeah, because we got official word yesterday, Wendy, that the NFL has set the salary cap for $177.2 million for the 2018 league year. On the one hand, you hear someone say, that's $10 million more than it was this past season. On the other hand, you look at it closely and you say that represents the smallest percentage increase from one year to the next over the past 5 years. This 177.2 figure is a little bit lower than teams were expecting or hoping for based off of projections that were taken both in December and more recently than that. At the end of the day, I get it. $177.2 million is plenty of money to facilitate your top players. But as we know, some teams push it right to the limit of the salary cap. This is perhaps a bit lower, and the Steelers and every team probably would have loved to see that number at 178.5 or 179 $1 million.
Well, D'Angelo, you heard Jeremy, and Le'Veon Bell understands his options. Certainly, he's being well counseled. At the end of the day, he'll have to make a business decision. You know, if you're Le'Veon Bell, do you hold out if you're asked to play under the franchise tag again?
Yeah, absolutely. He has to. I mean, he is too dynamic of a football player to that team to not be locked up long term. You know, I understand doing that franchise tag if, you know, we just seem to not be able to get anywhere near, you know, the number you want. But they seem to be pretty close. And if they're that close, they have to somehow find a way to get the deal done. Because if I'm him, you're not going to see me until week 10.
Wow. And, both sides say they are making progress, so nobody's disputing that. It's clear that gap is narrowing. They just haven't gotten where they need to be. How about I have that button? Right over there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, let's give that to Teddy. Because
what am I, soup
no,
pop out or something?
you're good. Because it's Tuesday, and so, you've been here. You've seen this. We don't panic or patience on Le'Veon Bell holding out, Teddy. Oh.
I just pushed it right down.
Right
I don't
there.
even have to finish the question in terms of panicking if you're a Steeler fan or a member of that Steeler locker room, because you saw what happened last year. He held out. He didn't come in that training camp, started the year slow, and then really got going post-Thanksgiving. You want Le'Veon Bell there. Arguably the best running back, one of the best offensive weapons in the National Football League. You want him there. You want him happy. You don't want this affecting your locker room. And I understand these are serious words Jeremy Fowler's talking about to be the standard bearer of running backs. So he's thinking about other people. He's thinking about David Johnson. He's thinking about Zeke Elliott. All of these other running backs are going to be coming up that can say, whoa, Lev got this, and that's the market. So that's the type of difference he wants to make. He's thinking about the entire running back profession. He should, too, because he's that good.
How much of that plays into a decision as a player, D'Angelo? I mean, clearly, first and foremost, he wants to take care of himself and his family, and that's understandable. But when you are talking about representing a bigger group, how much of that is a consideration?
I mean, it plays a big part. And for Le'Veon Bell to even consider that, it just shows you that he's serious. He's for real. For him to consider, hey, it's not just about me. I want the guys behind me to benefit from this as well, because I'm saying we undervalue the running back position. But that dude is a player. And there's a couple other guys who are very similar to him, like you said, David Johnson, Ezekiel Elliott when he gets around that time, They should be paid. I don't know when we went to the age of not paying running backs. I know they get beat up, but when they're going, they can help your team a lot.
I almost equate it to the quarterback position. It seems like no matter where you are in terms of the best quarterback, the next quarterback gets the highest paid deal. All right, if it's Stafford, if it's going to be Cousins, it's going to be the next guy after that. It's almost like those quarterbacks talk. All right, it's almost like they talk. You imagine that? Those quarterbacks talk.
I'm sure the agents talk.
Those quarterback agents talk. You got to get this much more than this. Pretty soon, these running backs are going to talk also. See, I'm this good, Lev got this, and then now it's my turn to get above that.
So we've established, Field, how important he is to this team, what he can bring. You also got a quarterback who's getting older. You don't know how long that window is going to last, because this is a prolific guy. So, I mean, there's always a reason it might not get done, but can you see a way it doesn't get done?
Sure, I can see a way it doesn't get done.
That's what's fascinating, really.
There's a chasm right now, and I think the Steelers are comfortable making Le'Veon Bell not just the highest paid running back in football, but the highest paid running back in football by a wide margin. Because right now the market is depressed. To D'Angelo's point, we're talking about LaShawn McCoy or Devontae Freeman at $8.5 million. If Le'Veon Bell is not playing for anything less than $14.5 million per season, $6 million difference. That's a massive difference on an annual basis. And so there is certainly a scenario where the team say, listen, we can extend, but we can't extend that much. That would compromise us from keeping other players. And the Steelers are a good team. The reality, when you're a good team, you have good players, and good players cost a lot of money. So they don't have a bunch of guys that you can just say, all right, well, we're keeping Le'Veon Bell, but we're going to cut these three other guys who aren't important to us. They've got blue-chip players all over their roster.
They sure do.
This will not be easy.
Well, again, this is something we'll continue to watch. We'll talk more about it as the show goes on. 4 o'clock Eastern, technically, the deadline for teams to apply the franchise tag. The Dolphins have already done that when it comes to Jarvis Landry. In fact, they did it quite early. But the team has also granted Landry permission to seek a trade. In fact, the team met with Landry's agents at the Combine last week and discussed his ability to look elsewhere for 2018, which begs the question, Field, on potential landing spots for Jarvis Landry.
So there are obvious suitors that Jeremy Fowler, actually on the show earlier, reported earlier on during the Combine, include the Baltimore Ravens, also the Chicago Bears, which you can expect them to be attached to basically any wide receiver that could be available this offseason. The trick in acquiring Jarvis Landry is that it's in essence a double dip. You're not just signing him to a lucrative deal because you know he's not going to say, yeah, I'll take $5 million a year. If he's going to get tagged for $16 million per season, he probably wants $14, $15 million per year in a multi-year deal. So you're paying him that money. Plus, you're trading for him, which could cost you a second-round pick or perhaps multiple picks. So you have to decide, is this the player that is worth, again, as I say, the double dip of investments to make your roster better?
Oh, D'Angelo, you were at the Combine, and you know what teams are talking about. You heard the scuttle, if you will. Give us some context. How good is Jarvis Landry?
He's very good. Very, very good. I mean, he not only can impact the game catching the ball, but he can impact the game when he gets his hands on the ball, not just running routes, I meant to say. His run out the catch ability is phenomenal. It's elite. I compared him to Anquan Bolden. Watching him in college, I thought he was a good player, but having been on the field and playing against him, he is one of the toughest runners with the ball in his hands. It's what makes him a great punt returner. It's why guys don't want to tackle him. You know, we always say in this league, hey, this guy's a good corner. This guy's a good safety or receiver. He's a good football player. And a good football player, you want to get because you know at some point they'll affect the game.
How often do wide receivers set the tone for your team? Very, very, very rarely. I mean, Anquan Bolden was one of those guys like D'Angelo's talking about, but I watch the Miami Dolphins and I see the toughness coming from number 14, Jarvis Landry. He's setting the tone. I mean, a few years ago, I think when Philbin was there, when that team had basically quit in that London game, there was one guy playing hard, and I'll never forget this. It was Jarvis Landry fighting for extra yards, making the catches. To me, that said so much about him. He didn't care about the situation. He doesn't care what the record is. He just wants to play hard. That's what I see from him. And it's those stats in terms of yards after catch, one of the best in the league, like D'Angelo's talking about. This kid here to set your tone. The Edelmans, the Boldens, the Landrys.
That's good company.
Those are tough guys that really set the tone for your team.
Well, the Rams now, for the third straight year, have used the franchise tag. This time around, they've used the non-exclusive franchise tag on safety LaMarcus Joyner. Now, we had reported that they would likely choose between Joyner and Sammy Watkins. You know, perhaps that's the case. Either way, Sammy Watkins is now a true free agent. Both Sammy Watkins and LaMarcus Joyner helped lead the Rams to the playoffs last season. Watkins led the team with 8 receiving touchdowns, while Joyner's 3 picks were tied with Mark Barron for most on the Rams. So, Field, we know Marcus Joyner staying put for right now. What about Watkins?
Sammy Watkins, if he chooses, can be a free agent in 8 days and about 2 hours from right this moment. And this is a player that, of course, entered the league 4th overall pick in the draft. He has not tasted free agency yet. Many of us assumed last year when the Rams had a 2nd-round pick plus E.J. Gaines to acquire Sammy Watkins in a 6th-round pick that the idea was, let's trade for him now and then make him perhaps one of, if not the highest-paid wide receivers in football at some point in time. If Sammy Watkins wants to be patient and test the market, he can do so. Would it be prudent to do so? It absolutely would. There are teams that have more money to spend at that wide receiver spot than the Rams might. And if Sammy Watkins wants to become a $15 million per year wide receiver, I would not be surprised if there are multiple teams willing to make him that next Wednesday at 4 p.m.
Well, look, let's assume for the sake of argument that this was a choice between Joyner and Watkins. Let's just say that. So having said that, are the Rams making the right choice in your opinion?
Oh, they absolutely are making the right choice. I mean, it's a no-brainer.
Right
for as dynamic of a player as Sammy Watkins is, I can find a receiver. He's fast. He's fast. He's big, great hands. But I can't find a guy like LaMarcus Joyner. They don't grow on trees. I talked about with Jarvis Landry being a football player. LaMarcus Joyner is cut from the same cloth. He's a football player. He's a guy who was a nickel corner, slot guy inside. They moved him to safety, trying to figure out if he can do it. And that kid is phenomenal. He only had 3 interceptions, but he impacted the game in so many ways. 185 pounds, you see him right there blowing up receivers. I mean, this dude plays like he's 6'2", 215 pounds.
You keep the defensive player. I mean, receivers,
says Teddy Bruce.
To pay that much for a receiver, I mean, you got to make the choice here. I mean, Wade Phillips is going to love having him. They just got another corner in a trade, if I believe
Marcus
so.
Peters.
That defense in that defensive backfield, it's shaping up now to get that defense going. You got the reigning defensive player of the year there. To have a defensive back that can cover is so valuable in this league, so I think they made the right choice.
Just by the way, a footnote here, this is not a foregone conclusion that Sammy Watkins will not be back next year. It's simply that if he wants to test the free agent market, the ball is in his court. And we know how the league works. You get competition amongst suitors, the next thing you know, the price tag goes way up. So the Rams, who eventually are going to have to pay Aaron Donald, eventually going to have to pay Todd Gurley, in 2 years going to have to pay Marcus Peters, And Jared Goff eventually is going to be eligible for a deal. I'm just saying.
That
I know
list
that's
is long.
That's a good problem to have.
Yeah,
a lot of
it
young talent.
really
Yeah,
is.
but you know, salary cap managers and team presidents are always being mindful of right now, plus down the line, that Sammy Watkins, if he so chooses, will have plenty of suitors. But maybe he returns to L.A. because they feel as though he's a centerpiece of that offense.
Well, you never know. And to your point, Les Snead will take this negotiation all day,
Yes,
every day. We continue to make our way through this list as we work toward the 4 o'clock deadline for the franchise tag. The Jags have told receiver Allen Robinson that they will not use the franchise or the transition tag on him. It is still possible that the two sides can come to an agreement on a long-term deal, but Robinson would become an unrestricted free agent if that is not the case by 4 o'clock Eastern on March 15th. So again, like we have with all of these players, Field, I'll start with you on potential options for Robinson.
Can we go back to the same teams we were just talking about for Jarvis Landry? Baltimore Ravens make some sense, but the Chicago Bears make sense too, and a desperate need for wide receivers. I mean, completely desperate need for wide receivers. So much cap space. They've done some offseason housekeeping. They will officially get a bunch more space once Mike Glennon is released at the start of the new league year. And just imagine that any potential offensive difference maker free agent is mentioned, the San Francisco 49ers are going to come up because they've got still plenty of cap space. I don't think this buzz about Jimmy Garoppolo is fake. I think it's palpable. I think this buzz that players are feeling
extremely real. Agreed.
Very real, that they want to go play with him right now. They view him as potentially the next great thing at quarterback. I think Allen Robinson, Chicago, San Francisco, maybe Baltimore, though they don't have quite as much flexibility, all makes sense.
Listen, John Lynch has been very clear that they're sort of using this as a sales tool.
Sure.
And why wouldn't you? Hey, Jimmy Garoppolo's locked up. He's here. Come play with us. D'Angelo, what about the struggles or the challenges of returning from injury in an instance like this?
It's just really trying to figure out if I'm that same player. Am I as explosive as I used to be, especially at the wide receiver position? Allen Robinson is a guy who uses that speed, and he gets in and out of his breaks with the best of them. And so for him, it's just being comfortable. You know, I think the good part, he was injured week 1, I think.
He sure was, yep.
And so he had essentially the whole season.
Long time.
Where a lot of guys get hurt week 10, 12, 11. It kind of lingers on during the season. So hopefully, because he got injured early, he can bounce back and, be effective.
You know, Teddy, there's the physical recovery, but
That's true.
You know, how does that mental aspect, because I think you're right, just believing that you're that same guy must be hard.
Allen Robinson, yes, but the mental aspect also that I want to talk about, Wendy's, with Blake Bortles, because, man, what this was turning into with Allen Robinson. 2015, 80 receptions, 14 touchdowns from Bortles. 2016, 73 receptions, 6 touchdowns. You started to see a development of quarterback receiver, like the 1-2 punch right there, but then he goes down, and in week 1, and all of a sudden now it's possible that he might not even be there. Blake Bortles is going to miss this guy, that touchdown production. He was a great receiver. You hope he can just get back on his feet and be a productive receiver in the league, which I think he can.
Well, again, we are making our way till 4 o'clock Eastern. A lot of the decisions are in, so to speak, on the franchise tag, but there's still a few players we continue to monitor, and we'll keep you updated. Ahead, though, also, the prospects gave it their best, but sometimes things don't go according to plan. Just ask Taron Johnson. Stick around. The top blunders in Combine history. Plus, which team will have the golden ticket in the Kirk Cousins sweepstakes? D'Angelo is here to give us an inside look at Cousins' time in the nation's capital. Stick around for his interesting insight. And before he put a show on at the Combine, Shaquem Griffin was dominating at Central Florida despite his disability. We'll share his story.
I'm sure he has had a lot of people in his life tell him that football is not the right avenue to pursue. But if you want something bad enough, you can make it happen. And Shaquem's done that.